It's simply gone completely off the rails at this point, as we have another update regarding Pavel Zacha and another trade update on his front. And with everything going on, it's genuinely insane to see what this deal is entailing from this article. We're going to be breaking it down, going over as well Andrew Peeke and what currently stands for a very important season for him coming up and what a contract extension could look like. We're going to break it all down here in this video. Before we do jump into it though, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to hit the sub button if you haven't already. We're on the road to 8K, and we're just over a third of the way there. Your sport's been absolutely incredible as of late. Appreciate all of you guys watching these videos in the dog days of summer, but we need to get straight into this because, as I've been talking about over the past few videos, trade reports are still hovering around the Boston Bruins, even though things are going in the complete opposite direction of what Bruins fans want to see. And I first want to pull up the article going over Pavel Zacha once again, as we now have another update regarding what a trade would look like for him on this front. And this is what we have currently going over from this article. A third-round pick in 2026 for Pavel Zacha with no retained salary. Now, first of all, I don't even think Pavel Zacha should be traded, unless it is for one where there is absolutely zero chance the Boston Bruins to lose. But when I get into the rest of this article, and I want to get your guys' opinion, so listen up closely, this is just more insane than what we're seeing already here. But I want to first talk about a third-round pick, because obviously the Bruins are kind of garnering a bit of picks over the next few seasons. We know that we have 5 firsts over the next 3 years, and they're still at that point where it's more leaning towards a rebuild now rather than a retool, even though we're staying on the fence about that. This trade simply just does not make sense. When you're looking for a guy like Pavel Zacha, who is 28 or 29 years old, not sure when his birthday is, but let's just call it 28 for the sake of making it younger, for a third-round pick and a guy who is still going to be here for the next few seasons and still provide well with a Bruins team that seemingly needs another winger, getting rid of another second-line player, winger or center, just makes zero sense, especially where players currently stand that we're going to see over the next few seasons. I wouldn't say any of those just yet are ready to roll. So when you're taking a look at a third-round pick for Pavel Zacha, this makes genuinely no sense. And kind of continuing on that, when they're looking at Pavel Zacha, we know it's the Vancouver Canucks, the Utah Mammoth. So in this case, it was the Utah Mammoth. Now, I believe this is from Heavy.com. So I still want you to take this with a grain of salt because this is just a projection of what they think a trade in terms of value will look like. But even then, this value is just frankly ridiculous. Now, of course, Pavel Zacha has been in the realm of trades for quite a long time. And when it does come down to it now, it really hasn't gone anywhere. Pavel Zacha's name has been in there in July 1st, even before that, going into now. He's still around there, and even throughout the season, there was reports of Pavel Zacha being one of those players traded at this year's trade deadline, and ultimately, we saw it didn't work out on a trade side of things. We were not sure if calls were officially going anywhere. We know they were getting calls, but we don't know how enticed the Bruins were to actually move Pavel Zacha on this instance. And when you're looking at what Pavel Zacha could be returned, and we're going to jump into that here now in a moment, what they have planned for moving Pavel Zacha genuinely just makes zero sense and honestly makes this team even worse than what it would look like already. Now, this does come from the fourth period, so once again, David Pastrnak, he's in tune with the stuff, but may not be the greatest decision here. And this is what he had to say about a Pavel Zacha trade and what this would kind of go to at the end of the day. And the fourth period reported that the Bruins could look to shop Pavel Zacha in this case, and listed Utah as an interested party. Zacha would provide the Mammoth with center depth, open up the Bruins to acquire Jean-Gabriel Pageau. While trading for a defender would also be beneficial, Pageau makes this team better today. Now, I don't know about you guys, and this is where I want you guys to chime in the comments below, but I do not think that Jean-Gabriel Pageau in any realm of possibility is better than Pavel Zacha, nor will he be. At this point right now, Pavel Zacha, 4 years younger, Jean-Gabriel Pageau, it's not great, honestly, at the end of the day, and I'm going to jump into a comparison between the two, but obviously, as we know here from this article going back to the trade deadline and kind of going over where reported teams are going and over the offseason, the reported teams linked to Jean-Gabriel Pageau features the Carolina Hurricanes, Winnipeg Jets, Minnesota Wild, and the Boston Bruins. Now, it would be okay. I wouldn't argue if Jean-Gabriel Pageau was traded to this Boston Bruins team. Now, if you're making a dumb trade like the one proposed, that's where I'm getting a bit on the side of why is this even, why is this going down? Why are we even considering this at this point? And taking a look at StatHead right here, StatHead Hockey, the comparison between the two, even though Jean-Gabriel Pageau has, much more on the green, so much more on the positive side of things, you're looking at Pavel Zacha playing 60 games less, while also just being right there on the edge. Already has more assists. It's only 25 goals behind, 20 points behind, 24 points behind. It's just not big enough discrepancy to say that Jean-Gabriel Pageau is the better player than Pavel Zacha. really any point in his career. And, I won't argue in his rookie season with Pavel Zacha when Jean-Gabriel Pageau was already a few years in. That's a different time. But right now, we're looking at 2025 going to 2026. It genuinely makes zero sense to why you're even arguing that Jean-Gabriel Pageau is better than Pavel Zacha and why this trade should go down. Pavel Zacha will probably surpass much of this points total and stuff from Jean-Gabriel Pageau this year if the Bruins, once again, in their top 6 are firing. And it just makes no sense. I don't understand why this is going down. So I want to know what you guys think here in the comments below about this, kind of jumping into all the ideas of where this team stands on getting rid of Pavel Zacha versus, keeping him versus trying to move him elsewhere. I think that we're in a very interesting spot on that side of things, and where things go from here, it remains uncertain, in all honesty. I really genuinely have no idea what the next plan is for the Boston Bruins. I'm not going to lie, but I don't think this is the option to trade Pavel Zacha for Jean-Gabriel Pageau, or at least make that scheme kind of come into fruition. But before we do go on to talking about Andrew Peeke, I did want to pull up this from StatMuse, kind of going over. I just searched up, the point total for each year. When you're looking at him, jumping from New Jersey to Boston obviously was the best decision of his career thus far. Has made a much better look on there. 21 goals his first 2 seasons, 14 in the last. And although, it was a bit of a point drop off this year, 12 from the year prior in his point total in his career. You're looking at a good Boston Bruins team. He's going to surpass that. That team last year we know was bad, and he spent time in the first line, spent time in the second line. He was a bit all over the place. But when you're looking at his stats compared to the rest, it's obviously a much better position than what Jean-Gabriel Pageau would bring to any sort of lineup in this Boston Bruins team. So I just want to point that out before we do move on. Now, I want to get your guys' opinion once again, but when it comes down to it now, and where we currently look, we have a name in Andrew Peeke, who's going to be a very interesting option for not just this season, but going into next year, where he's going to be a UFA after this season. And Andrew Peeke right now, from this article right here, the 2025-26 season is a significant one for Peeke and is entering a campaign as a pending UFA. With this, the Bruins will need to decide on the 6'3" defenseman is somebody they want to sign to a contract extension or not. Now, taking a look at Andrew Peeke, we do have a contract projection here that we're going to jump into here in a moment. We can take a look at his stats as he kind of has been around the team, for a couple years now. He's been up and down through this lineup, and this year we got a very good look at him as one of these players that really punched above their weight class while we had a few defensemen out. And when I say a few, I mean a lot. We saw Andrew Peeke on occasion on the first line, crazy enough to say, but has been, pretty suffice there. And at 27 years old, for what he brings, 6'3", 17 points last year, 76 games, just under 20 minutes time on ice a game. And we know he's a third-line defenseman. I think that if you can get him at a good price, and if you can keep him for a valuable piece, why not? He's looking as a player that has been very beneficial over the past few years, been very solid in his projections, and has been a guy that, you can trust out there, even on the third line, really, whenever you need him. So I'm saying right now, of course, pending all this year, pending what happens, he could have a major drop-off. Let's hope not, but right now, he looks like a guy that I would certainly keep on this bottom pairing at the defense. And looking at his projected contract, 3 by $2.8 million, seems like a very fair deal to me. We know the Bruins defense has quite a hefty amount of money, I'll be willing to say, but I don't hate the idea of keeping Andrew Peeke at 2.8, 3 years, locks him up until he's, 31 about, and go from there. I think you have a lot of options there, and it's going to be a very exciting one to see what the Bruins decide to do on his front as well, and how his season will play out. But that's all I have in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. I'll be keeping you updated with all the Pavel Zacha stuff. I know that this is something that I really don't want to see him traded, but, we're going to continue to hear about it. Once articles happen, it's going to be like an avalanche where they're all going to be brought to us as Bruins fans. So I'll keep you updated with all of that. But that is all I have in this video, like I mentioned. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button. I'm signing out, though. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.